We got Aidan
We
coming
got a
in.
guest coming in.
How are you guys? Good to see you both.
We're great.
What's
How are
up?
you?
Good to be on. I love this show.
Are you
Dude, it's
celebrating today?
fantastic to have you.
And if so, what?
Over the fundraise.
A fundraise or just the Studio Ghibli moment? I mean, it was a massive moment for like crossing the chasm
That's
again.
so last week, John.
That's yeah, you're over it.
Yeah, that's like a million years ago here. Time moves differently inside the lab, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're excited. The team morale is like really, really good.
that's awesome.
And it's like awesome to see like my colleagues have worked like really hard to make like these tools more liberal, to make them more fun.
Cool.
Kind of like look out into the world and like see the fruits of their labor, right?
That's
How
awesome.
are you guys? Yeah.
We're great.
So I guess
Hanging
talk
out,
about
live streaming.
like evaluating like what like how do you guys evaluate internally like a successful launch? Because the reason that I knew it was successful is I had a few posts that were sort of breaking
this is
teapot
funny.
containment. And I would have a lot of people quoting it saying like, all right, guys, jig is up. Tell me what app you're using for this. Like people just like, there's still people out there that like,
They don't
just
know the name OpenAI.
Yeah.
But they know that this filter exists and they want it. And that's
Yeah.
a very, very good sign.
I do
So is-
wonder if there's like this interim moment where people are like, "Wow, Snapchat's gotten really good."
Yeah,
and they're
totally.
Like, like what's going on here? Like, I haven't used this app for a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Spiegel's been cooking.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
must be
yeah.
TikTok. Yeah, I mean, I got a couple cold DMs from people saying like, "Hey, I ran out of images. Can you make one for me?" Clearly, you're making a lot of these. It was like,
Yeah, no,
I'll,
I got a lot of those too. People
I'll be a
like begging
good,
me,
good
like,
Samaritan.
rate limits.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, how did you process the moment? Did you predict this, and what was the shape of your expectation versus what wound up happening?
Yeah, so I did not predict this, to be
Mm-hmm.
candid. Like we had the tool internally. Like I played around with him, like, this is cool. Didn't quite like, feel in the way that I think that like I felt it immediately after launch, right?
Yeah.
I do think our leadership predicted this pretty well. I think like
Mm-hmm.
Sam and others had like, well calibrated intuitions for this.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, like, they've done a lot of viral stuff, right? Like, I think
Totally.
that, at some point, like that you start to update all the way down. But yeah, like I think, go ahead.
On the tech side, like it does seem like there's a new algorithm involved, and we don't need to dive into that. But I want to know, like, there is a different path where we're seeing more incremental updates, I imagine, and we're seeing like the text is getting slightly better every week, but there's something almost more viral about being discontinuous, and all of a sudden just hitting the internet over the head with like text is good now, right? And is that just a function of your development in like the product cycle, or is there some deliberate strategy there?
Yeah, I think I can't speak for
Sure.
too much in terms of like deliberate strategy, but it is interesting where like to your point, like for these text models, we update them pretty often, right?
Yeah, of
Like
course.
like every 2 months or so, like they're getting better. Like people are always kind of seeing these steady improvements. But the funny thing was like when DeepSeek came out. It was kind of this like really interesting moment where a lot of people hadn't tried, or like our most recent models. A lot of people hadn't tried our most powerful models, and they saw that discontinuity, right?
Yeah,
Where they're
totally.
like, I've been using like 4.0 from like earlier this year. I used this new reasoning model. Like, holy shit, this is amazing, right?
Yep.
And I do think that like even things that are continuous to us, right? Like as people that use these tools often, still are sometimes weirdly discontinuous to like outsiders, right?
Yeah.
Or to like people that aren't as new to the product. But like 4.0 image gen is like a great example of that, right? Like we went from like Dolly to this, and it was like this massive jump, and I think that like that jump does add to the virality, as you said.
Totally.
That makes sense. How do you guys, I feel like even people that use and love OpenAI's products daily, sort of continue to give the feedback on like naming, it's confusing, blah, blah, blah. Like, has that not been a focus because on a long enough time horizon, you just sort of ask it, to do things and it just sort of selects like the correct underlying model and it's just routed perfectly. And so it's just like not, cause like if you were like, listening to customers, you'd be like, providing basically like more information for the average user in the product to be like, well, you should really use this for that, or maybe try it again with this other thing. So is it just like, we're accelerating so quickly that like none of this is even going to matter. You're not even going to know the names.
Yeah, at this point, like OpenAI is so bad at naming that I think we've like dug our own grave here, right? Like internally, things are even worse, right? Where like what the hell does this mean? Like Sam tweeted something this morning where it's like, run, redo, like this time for real.
It's
OMG,
restart
like, it's like real,
0331 final 2 restart for real.
Yeah, I mean,
OMFG3.
I was laughing at it, like, is it 4D chess? But at the same time, like, you could imagine that you gave every model
No,
like
it's
a
like
name
this
like
is like a real
strawberry
thing, yeah.
ice cream, and like you give them cute names, and then it makes even less sense. Like, at least I know like O3 is a higher number than O1, so like it's probably better.
Yes,
And,
yes.
like,
No, you're right. Like, yeah,
yeah.
and sometimes we don't number things like in order, which is
Yeah, that is
worse,
odd.
right? It's like you're like it's like blueberry and upgrade to strawberry. Like I have no idea, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I think it could
but
be worse, but yeah.
I do think that Sam like tweeted this a month ago, but we do plan to start unifying
Yeah.
like our model selection, right?
Yeah, makes
So I
sense.
think like soon we will have like a much simpler, easier to grasp thing. And even for me, like I'm with one like testing these models all day, designing them and such. It's like unclear.
Yeah.
Like
Can
every
you
once in a
talk a
while,
little
like
bit
one's
about
best.
your day to day? Like, what do you actually do?
Yeah, I work on model design here.
Okay.
So I like work on behavior, like the way the models act, the way
Sure.
that like people like the experience behind use. And I also just work on general capabilities, so making the
Mhm.
model smarter in many domains, not just like kind of narrow areas.
Talk about making the model, and I don't know if you touched this, but you posted, I think it was a couple days ago, you said, nowadays I don't spend money without first deep researching. Everything I
Yeah.
buy, hand soap, toothpaste, lunch, houseplants,
Hmm.
is just better now. Sure, waiting 5 minutes for paper towel recommendations is weird, but in retrospect, this tape makes, and you specifically called out Amazon and Amazon Choice here, because I've wanted for a very long time to just have an Amazon where only products that appear are companies that have existed for like 100 years or more, because like I don't want like the
Yeah.
drop shipper who's like, yeah, I found the way to make this like 10% cheaper, and we can
Yep,
spend
yep.
that extra margin back on ads, and suddenly it's a business. And
Yeah.
so I can totally imagine a world in the future where I just go to ChatGPT and say that I want to buy paper towels, and then you guys are routing that basically based on what you know about me as a consumer, which I will pay
Yes.
10% more to get 50% better quality.
Operator,
or whatever
buy
it is.
me paper towels from a company that's been in business for 200 years.
A
That's
real
what
American
Jordy
paper
wants.
towel, like
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ben Franklin's paper towel vendor.
But that's been
Yeah.
but that's been people that are the critique has been like, okay, you're using this to like, it's not being used for commercial search, it's just being used to like generate answers to questions. But then obviously, and I'm saying this, you're not saying this, but it's obviously a threat to Google and to Amazon and other marketplaces when I'm going there and I'm saying, this is what I want to buy, like help me buy the best version. And it can be more aligned with my interests than an ads-based business model.
I'm like, like kind of an extreme libertarian when it comes to like sales and such, right? I do think there's going to be this like really, really cool world that we move into the next like year or two here, where as our tools for selecting like products like become like super, super smart, right? Like way smarter than me. Like they're going to be so much better than I or any other human I've ever met will be at like knowing exactly what I want, exactly like what other people love. It's just going to like increase competition, right? It's going to increase like selectivity, right? Like truly great companies who build like actual products that people love are going to like float to the surface way easier. And then like kind of all the like shit, like the drop shipping, like random guy doing a thing out of his basement that got the Amazon Choice label, like that's just all going to like fall away, like dead leaves falling off a tree. I'm excited for that because it's just going to make the market better, right?
Can you talk about other maybe underrated uses of OpenAI models? Obviously, everyone knows you can giblify your dog. Everyone knows that you can ask it to explain like AP Bio questions, but that use case is pretty interesting. What else? Where else are you seeing usefulness in the models?
Yeah, one thing I'm like on a kick with this recently, that I'm like really, really trying to get better at is just remembering to use these tools for learning, right? I think that like, there are a lot of things where I'm like, okay, I do this every day. I want to do it better. Like, here's a way for me to use deep research, etc. But I think the opposite is kind of interesting too. It's like when I don't use these tools or where like I did not have something previously in my life that would have demanded use. And I think like an example of this is like now that I have, something that like can give me a McKinsey style report in like, minutes, right? Like I should be using this all the hell, like every single day, right?
All the
Like,
time.
so before I go to bed, like I like generate like a deep research. I like, remind myself, like I got to read the deep research tonight. Like I got to like, it's just like brushing your teeth or something, right?
Yep, totally.
But remembering to
great-
use these systems is like such an important thing to me. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're very intentional about using them, they can make you smarter.
Yes,
And if you're
yes.
unintentional about them and you're just like last second, like I got to send this email, like just do it for me. Like maybe that's making you.
I mean,
less,
even
but,
for silly stuff, I was like, yes, I would like a 50-page report from a McKinsey analyst on the Metal Gear Solid fandom or like the history of sword art online, stuff that I would normally like have to puzzle together from like wiki and YouTube videos. because I'm like, I just want it all in one place to understand this stuff. And it's like these stupid things that you would never think to, actually get a full report on.
Oh my
It's just
gosh.
like available at
Yeah.
your fingertips. It's amazing.
As a kid, I remember
Um,
like all of those like like kind of fan fiction wikis or whatever that
Yeah.
I like dive through, and they're like
Yeah.
terrible, right? Like ads everywhere, like
Yep.
annoying
Totally.
to read. Like I'm so excited to just like remember that I can like use these things now, right? Exactly.
Oh yeah. It's amazing.
Talk about how we figure out. I feel like the way people disrespect robots. You saw this with bird scooters. You remember there
Yeah.
was the whole bird era where, like, in LA at least, like there was just entire fan pages dedicated to
Yeah.
like throwing birds off of buildings. You posted last week.
graveyard.
You said, "I suspect in 6 months it'll be safer to Uber than Waymo." And
Yeah.
going into this, you're basically saying like people are just like messing with the cars like on purpose. Like, is there when are humans going to learn to respect robots, and like do you have a sort of solution for this? Or
I say
anything
thank
can
you
think of?
at the end of my prompts.
Oh, I
Still.
love my Waymo. Yeah.
Always.
I like my Waymo's like a dog, right? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like good boy, thank you for the ride.
Good
You know what I mean?
boy.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm like very outspoken about this, and this is just my take. This is not like the view of my company. But like I do think that we should think a lot about like model welfare, and like that like well-being and like health of these models, as they get much smarter than they are today. Right today, this is like not at all a concern. But we could imagine though that as these systems get quite complex, we kind of care about like their internal state. We want them to like be well, right? And it might be that this is just like more economically valuable too, right? That like models that like like feel like they're in a good spot emotionally or whatever, like actually just like help humanity out more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that this is something that we should like get ahead on rather than like let it kind of like hit us. And I hope that like as these systems get incredibly intelligent, right, and as humanity kind of co-evolves with them, we can like get a partnership that's kind of mutually beneficial here. And I to be candid, like I am a bit disturbed by like, the like people throwing fruit at my Waymo, but I'm, maybe even more disturbed by like watching videos of people like kicking robot dogs on Twitter and stuff. It's like a small
Yeah.
thing. And like, again, these systems, like they don't feel pain or whatever today, like obviously. But I do think that like sentiment though, like, played out over the next like 5-10 years here as these systems again become incredibly intelligent, way more intelligent than we kind of expect today. It does worry me a bit. I think this is something we should just think about now.
What do you have? You posted in sort of kind of giving high level props to Manus for people saying, oh, it's a rapper, but then you're saying like, no, it doesn't really matter. Like the capabilities matter a lot more. Do you think that developers are not taking full advantage of OpenAI products in some ways? Because I think there's a concern of like, a talented team might not build an agent right now that was like they felt like was going to compete with Operator because they feel like, oh, we're going to get steamrolled. But like, do you feel like there's like just enough verticals and sort of places that you can build that like people aren't taking enough advantage of the underlying tech?
I certainly do. Yeah, like I think like Manus is a great example, right? Like we have like deep research as a product. We have like Operator, and they put it out and people still loved it. Like, and it did like still fill like some area that was kind of like left uncovered. I also, before I joined OpenAI, I was like a founder, and I was working, a lot with these APIs and such. And there really was this like sentiment, I think, in the community where people were like so scared of the rapper company label, that they really did leave like, kind of low hanging fruit, like unpicked, right? They were like so scared of like, like not even of like OpenAI or Anthropic steamrolling them, but more of just like people being like, that's just like rapping a language model. Like you're adding no value. Like, no, like the right rapper is a ton of value. You know what I
I
mean?
completely agree. Yeah, I thought that the whole rapper meme was like a VC psyop basically, because there were plenty of like fantastic businesses that maybe wouldn't hit hyperscale, and so the VCs were like, don't even bother. But they could build like really cool businesses, especially for like these young kids who are like in high school and like could have a business that's making $100,000. Like that's life changing and sets you up for so many different opportunities, so much experience with product development. I thought the rapper thing was a little annoying.
Talk about humor.
Yeah.
John has this thing where every week or so he'll say like, write me a joke, and he'll kind of prompt it in a way around kind of the stand-up comedians. And it's not consistently hitting yet. It's sort of like it's structured like a joke. So you keep waiting for the,
It's unintentionally funny because if you read it like you're a stand-up comic, it will sound like you're bombing intentionally, and that's funny. But I'm still the one that's making it funny.
Like the punchline gives crickets, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
But when I think about the next Ghibli moment, improvement, it would be being able to sort
Totally.
of consistently generate something that makes the user laugh. And think about the magic of that experience.
Incredible.
I can't wait. People are, I mean, it's actually, bear case for humanity is we're all just like, generating like perfect
Funny
jokes
content
over and over and
constantly.
over, just laughing.
That's when we all wirehead for sure.
Yeah, we all go crazy.
Yeah, it turns out like the ultimate addiction is like, humor, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, we're just laughing ourselves to death, entertaining ourselves to death.
I will say, GPT 4.5 was like a really interesting moment for humor for me, right?
Yeah.
Where like, I was testing this model internally a lot. And like one of the ways I like kind of realized like, wow, this actually is like an interesting step change above like our existing models. It was funny sometimes, right? Like the green texts were like great. You know what I mean? Like, like it's long form jokes, like maybe left a little bit of desire, to your point, like sometimes it would construct something that looks a lot like a joke and we get to the punchline and I would just like cock my head like, what? I have like no idea what you mean there.
Yeah.
But to be fair though, like, if you asked me to like write a good long form joke and you only gave me like 500 words to do it and like 500 like,
That's true.
words worth of thinking, I could not do it, right?
Yeah, it's
like,
hard.
I actually I would do much worse, I think, than these models.
Totally.
In fact, I actually don't know if I've written like any great long form jokes. You know what I mean? Like, if this is like one of those things where like we hold these models to a crazy standard. But I am so excited for them to get great at this because I do think that like to your point, like this is this could be like the next Imogen moment where people like do this. It just brings joy into the world. They're having a lot more fun. Like yeah, I want that, right?
It might also kind of solve your issue of like the beating up on the Waymo. Like if there's a friendly robot and he's telling you a joke, like it's a lot easier to give him a pat on the head and be like, "Good robot,"
Exactly. Do you have any? Are there versions of various models in the past that you felt an emotional sort of bond to that you still like they got away, like for some reason, like the one that got away, or it's like an old friend that you just like went different directions in life and you don't talk to them anymore, but you still every now and then you're like, you smile to yourself thinking about
3.5 Da Vinci. They just don't make them like they used to.
That one actually had like the bottomless pit jokes. You know what I mean? Like that was pretty good. Like that.
Yeah. That was
but not even in just humor, but
generally, yeah.
Yeah, you're so
the temperature.
Close, working, and I could just imagine like a version being so good for one thing or something that you cared about, and then
Ben Thompson still talks wistfully about Sydney. It's just like, oh, that was the most amazing experience.
Sydney was pretty great.
Because Sydney was like this sassy online character from like clearly from like Tumblr, some like, convexity that it fell into. I don't know. But who's your Sydney?
My Sydney is easy answer for me. It was Claude 3 Opus.
Okay.
That was like such a great model, and not an OpenAI model too. So I'm yelled at for saying that. But a ton of life to it. It was, I think, like I coined this like phrase "big model smell" when it came out. I was like, this model, like if you gave me like a blind test between this model and like other models that score as well in it at like academic benchmarks, I'm pretty certain that like much better than chance I could pick out Claude 3 Opus. It just was like soul to it, right? And it's a bit hard to see these things like when you do regular day-to-day prompts. I'm just asking it for like a recipe or something. It's not going to be like, oh my god, it's a big model. But I do think though it's easier to tell the difference in like model capabilities and kind of like character when you push them to extremes, right? When you deploy them into like agents that are doing like crazy things, when you give them like tons of context, when you have them like tackle really out of distribution hard problems, then you start to see like the creativity emerge, right? And this is like a really fun thing, and I think that it's a good lesson for playing with the models. It's a good lesson also for like designing benchmarks and evaluating the models too, right? But yeah, like 3 Opus is pretty great. And I think my daily driver right now, outside OpenAI is GPT 4.5. It's just such a fun model, right? Like I do feel like, closer to it than I do for previous models. It feels like it is more alive, if that makes sense.
And are you using GPT 4.5 in a different way because it doesn't interface with, it doesn't have some of the functionality that you get from an O3 high deep research product? What does an interaction with 4.5 look like for you? Is that just random questions throughout the day?
Yeah, just like chatting, casual stuff, right?
Cool.
These models are like, like great, colleagues, great therapists, right? Like, it's good to talk them out. Like, this is one of those things, just like, you can generate like a deep research report, before bed every night and just become like a way smarter person, right?
Yep.
You can also just like chat with these models about your life and I think become like a really well-adjusted person. Like there are like some people that I talk to in SF who are like really, really plugged into like, the model system, right? And you can like kind of tell like, yeah, these guys are like, they got that sorted out. Like they've been used, I don't know who their therapist is. It must be like, 4.5 or 3.5 Sonnet or somebody, right?
Yeah.
But like, they seem stable.
I wonder if in a few months you'll be like at a party and you'll be like, oh, like that guy's clearly like a Sonnet guy. Like that's a 4.5 guy over there. Like it's like rooting for a different football team or something.
Talk about, when somebody asks you like, hopefully they don't ask you this too much, but if somebody asks you like, oh, what do you think about the tariffs? Like, do your eyes just like glaze over because like none of this stuff matters on like a 10-year time horizon? Like, I was talking to John the other day, and I like sounded like so just AGI pilled, like as I was saying it out loud. Like, John was like, you sound ridiculous, but like I agree. And it was this basic sense that like there's just so much chaos in the world right now, politics, tariffs, all this stuff, people burning down, Teslas or whatever. And then you kind of zoom out a little bit and you sort of like understand, you just sort of like look at this sort of adoption of this technology and sort of understanding the potential. And it's almost like, none of this stuff matters because the world is going to look so different. Are you able to just be like 110% focused on the work and ignore all the noise, or do you still care to look up every now and then and look around?
Maybe I should be like more locked in than I am, right? Like maybe I should be like in a dark room, like just talking to the models and like, like feeling it out. But
maybe we're models. Maybe the OpenAI team is generating us to test on you.
Real Turing test.
Simulation goes deep, man. Like I was gonna tell you, but you found out too quick. I think, like when I joined OpenAI, I like tweeted this thing where when you like shoot an arrow and like let's say you're like in outer space, right? There's no gravity, and you like shoot an arrow, right? The arrow's gonna go forever unless it like runs into some black hole or something. And like, the little degree difference in like where you point it, if you like point it up a bit, point it down a bit, like compounds to like light years, right? Like as it like kind of travels like different destinations, right? Like, and in some sense, like, if I like shoot this arrow from like Earth without gravity or something, and I like, move my hand to the left a bit, it's like half the universe away, right? That's crazy. And I kind of, believe in the same thing, like as we like push these models to like crazy limits, right? That like little differences in the initial conditions, kind of like of, AGI being born or like of the politics of the time or like of the like capital distribution or whatever, I think can compound to like incredible differences in the limit. And I think that like, while it seems that these systems will be incredibly powerful and very robust, to maybe like, human will at some point, I don't think that is an argument for the initial conditions not mattering, if that makes sense.
Great.
How are you thinking about just safety AI doomerism these days? It feels like the conversation kind of moved past.
Feels like the doomers low key fell off.
Where are they? I don't see like
you don't hear about those.
Like less wrong at Twitter as much now, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were telling me I was going to be paperclipped for like 24 months straight, not paperclipped yet, and so I'm like, okay, move on. But what's it like internally?
What is it like I can't say too much about like kind of that.
Just like your vibe in SF maybe.
Yeah, like I think there are a lot of sharp people that like care a ton about like this going well, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
There's this like great quote. I forgot like the name of the like NASCAR driver. I'm gonna butcher it. Mario something, right? But like it's crazy at the Formula One level how many people think the brakes are for slowing down, right? And like sometimes like to go as fast as possible, right? Like to like get this out into the world as quickly as possible to make like the most like kind of economic impact. You do have to do like a bit of like safety. You do have to do a bit of testing. I think this should increase over time as like the expected impact also increases. I think OpenAI is incredibly good at like managing this, right? I think that like our leadership have done it for a while. They like will continue to get better at it too. And I think it's kind of a cool thing, right? To like to build systems that have like unexpected behaviors and like can do things that maybe we weren't aware of originally. And it's an important science to like figure this out before release, and to build things that get safer.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Last question for you: do you see us having a Ghibli style moment around agents this year? Not necessarily at OpenAI, but just potentially broadly, because we've talked about this on the show a bunch, but people have just been promising for decades now, you're going to be able to talk to this, talk to the computer and it'll book you the flight and the hotel and make your restaurant reservation. And we haven't had that magic experience yet.
I've seen a bunch of great operator demos, but I haven't seen that viral where it's like literally everyone that has access to Operator has used it and posted the results because they like got something cool done or whatever, right?
There's some sense too where like Ghibli's awesome because it takes 3 seconds to look at like an image, right, and be like, oh wow, like that's beautiful, like that like made like your like engagement photo like way cooler, right? Like it's like really quick. Then I do think that like some of the most important agents, like some of the like most important things that we'll build over the next like few years, might not have results that you can like look at in 3 seconds to be like, wow, like great job model, right?
Totally.
And in fact, I actually think that as like the economic potential and power of these systems increases, maybe it actually becomes slightly harder in the limit to tell the difference between like, capable systems and very, very capable systems, right? Just as models get better, it might be a bit harder to tell the difference between like a good model and like a brilliant model, right? The cool thing is though, is that like, it's a nines of reliability scaling problem. That as you like kind of like push these nines out and as you like make them more reliable in many more contexts, at some point they are just doing like a sizable chunk of economic labor, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, do I expect a Ghibli moment? I'm unsure. But I do expect like, these things to just provide a lot of economic value, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Beautiful.
Well, thanks for
I
joining.
have
This is
loved
fantastic.
this conversation.
Yeah, this is great. We
Yeah.
got to have you back soon.
Guys
This
are
was
awesome.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're welcome
Thanks so much.
anytime. You're welcome anytime.
Great
Thanks.
conversation.
Good to see you guys.
Have
will
fun
talk to
with
you
the
soon.
team. Congrats on the milestone, and keep it up.
Yeah.
Thanks. Likewise, guys. Talk to you later.
Boom. Size gong.
Bye.